Hello everyone, welcome to video number 1 on the book of Matthew. As we're adventuring to read the book of Matthew together this month, I thought I'd shoot the first of a few videos I'm going to do helping us understand the book better. So let me start off with talking about the author. The man who wrote the book of Matthew is the man named Matthew, also known as Levi. In Matthew chapter 9, verse 9, we have this being written about him. So he talks about himself in his very own book, but he doesn't say that it's himself during this passage. It says, "And as Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man called Matthew, sitting in the tax office. And he said to him, 'Follow me.' And he rose and followed him." That's it. One verse talking about how Matthew met Jesus. Now we have to remember that at this time in which he met Jesus, Jesus had been on the scene for a couple months already, maybe even a year, doing ministry, gathering other followers, preaching, doing miracles. And so as Matthew is sitting in his tax collecting booth, or that was his occupation, he would have heard about this man. He would have probably seen him pass by. He would have probably seen some other disciples talking about him. And so when the opportunity arises for him, a tax collector, to be invited to follow with Jesus, he immediately leaves what he is and his profession, all that he knows, and follows him. Now, the occupation of a tax collector in those days was it paid very well, but it also made you were the outcast of society, because you were a Jewish person working for the enemy. You're working for the Roman government to collect taxes. Nobody likes to pay taxes now. Nobody liked to pay taxes then. And so you got a great job and you got some prestige out of it, but as a result, your fellow countrymen did not like you. And this is the way you earned your money. Rome set the taxes. They're gonna collect maybe say 10% this week or today or this month. Well, you as a tax collector could add your own portion on top of that, and there's nothing they could do. So this week it's going to be 15% taxes. I'm going to keep 5 and I'm going to give 10 to Rome. And so as a result, they were stealing money from people quite often. And so Matthew knew what he was, he knew what he did, this was his living, and he decides to give all that up to follow Jesus. And if you continue on in Matthew chapter 9, you see that Jesus is invited to his house, and at his house, at Matthew's house, he has his friends, other tax collectors and sinners. And Jesus is questioned as to, why are you hanging out with these types of people? And he responds to that with saying, it's not the healthy that need a physician, but the sick people. They need me. These type of people need me. So, when we're talking about the book of Matthew, the key word is king. All throughout the book of Matthew, it talks about Jesus being king. And Matthew is a Jew. He's writing to other Jewish people about a Jewish person who he believes is the promised king of the Old Testament. And so as a result, Matthew, more than any of the other Gospels, quotes the Old Testament or alludes to the Old Testament probably 130 times. That's a lot in 26 chapters. And we have phrases like, this was done to be fulfilled, that it may be fulfilled. And so it's giving you Old Testament things that are being fulfilled during the first century in the life of Jesus. So to wrap up our first video today, I thought I'd share with you kind of an outline of the book of Matthew and how I'm going to break it down. And hopefully you guys will follow with me as I do some more of these videos. So I did a little illustration. I wrote some stuff on some styrofoam cups, so here you go. Hope you can see it. This is extremely high-tech. I'll let the camera focus in. All right, you can see that. Hopefully you can see that it says Matthew. And you can see the writing in blue says King. I'll zoom in on it, just in case you missed it. I guess this is the way my mind works. So this
is the book of Matthew, all the divisions. And you can see tall cups and small cups. And what we have here, and I will go through this and just briefly tell you about it. The book of Matthew has five main teachings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in between those main times of teachings, it has narratives, stories. And so the first one we see here is about the birth and infancy of Jesus Christ. The next story is about how he's being prepared to be a king. This would be his baptism and his temptation. Then the first teaching we get to in chapters 5 through 7 is what we call the Sermon on the Mount. And then there's another narrative part and talking about the power of the king, and this is about miracles. Teaching number 2 is lessons on evangelism and discipleship. The next narrative is the rejection of the king. They are questioning him all the time as to why he's doing what he's doing. The next teaching in chapter 13 is all about parables and how the parables talk about the kingdom. The next narrative is the mission of the king. The next teaching, he teaches on humility, the seriousness of our sin, and something about relationships, which we'll talk about. There's a narrative here, his final mission on earth here, and this is going into his death and resurrection. But then he pauses for his very last group of teachings, all about the second coming of the king, which is pretty awesome if you think about it. And then it ends in the same way it begins. There's a narrative about this death and resurrection of this king. So you can see that we have the birth and infancy of the king, and at the very end we have the death and resurrection of the king. So if you followed with me on that, so I will do some videos breaking down those different sections, and I'll give you a handout if you guys want that as you're reading through it. And so since those are the sections, what I would encourage you guys to do is on a piece of paper, write out that heading, read that section, and write down what's going on. Write down some of your thoughts and some of your ideas, or maybe even some questions about what's going on in each one of those sections. So I'll upload this video, and then I'll post a few more to come. Okay, see you soon.